Today, I'll be sharing real-life horror stories, terrifying encounters, and creepy situations that are all too real. Get ready for some chilling tales with suspenseful twists that'll keep you on edge. I've always loved the idea of solo travel, especially in an RV. There's something freeing about it. Just me, my RV, and the open road. After months of planning and saving up for my first long trip, I decided to spend a week camping in this popular national park campground. It's the kind of place where people park their RVs, go hiking, and just relax in nature. It seemed like the perfect spot to unwind and take a break from the grind. The first couple of days went by perfectly. I had my morning coffee overlooking a lake, explored the nearby trails, and met some friendly campers along the way. But as the days went on, something strange started to happen. Little things, at first, that I chalked up to coincidence. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, I noticed someone standing by the edge of my RV. It was just a fleeting glance, but enough to make me pause. I figured it was someone passing by. There are a lot of campers here, after all. But then, I started seeing the same person the next night, and the night after that. It wasn't just that they were walking by, they were lingering. I'd catch glimpses of them standing too close to my window or walking past the RV, but they'd always be gone when I opened the door to check. I thought maybe it was just some curious fellow camper, someone who liked to wander. But then, things started getting a bit more uncomfortable. One night I went out to grab some firewood and noticed that one of my windows was slightly open. I hadn't left it open when I left, so I immediately went inside to check. Nothing seemed out of place, but that window, why was it open? It was a small thing, sure, but it made my skin crawl. I double-checked the locks on all the doors and windows, made sure everything was secure, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I kept hearing little noises outside, faint tapping sounds against the side of the RV, like someone was brushing up against it. Still, I told myself it was just the wind or animals. I'd been camping enough to know how the forest could play tricks on your senses. But then, that same person showed up again. And this time, they weren't just standing there. They were peering through the window, eyes locked on me. My heart stopped in my chest. I froze. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The figure stayed there for a moment, just watching me, and then just like that, they were gone. I couldn't make out any details, couldn't see who it was, just the outline of someone. The fact that they knew where I was, what I was doing, it was too much to ignore. The next morning, I checked my security camera footage. I'd installed a couple of small cameras around the RV just for peace of mind, mostly for when I was hiking or out for long stretches of the day. When I watched the footage, my stomach dropped. There in the footage was the same person. They had been circling my RV every single night, watching. For the past week. They never got close, but they always kept an eye on me, never breaking the pattern. I felt like I was losing my mind. I hadn't been able to sleep properly, the fear eating at me, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. I kept telling myself to just leave, pack up, and drive out of there, but I couldn't shake the idea of who this person was. Were they harmless, just some lonely camper, or was there something more sinister going on? I decided I needed to check my RV in detail, make sure nothing was tampered with. That's when I noticed something odd. My tire pressure was way lower than it should have been. I checked the tires, and sure enough, the valve caps had been loosened. Just enough to slowly leak air over time, enough to potentially strand me here in the middle of nowhere. At that point, I couldn't ignore it any longer. Someone was messing with me on purpose. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. That night, I decided I wasn't going to sit in fear anymore. I planned to leave first thing in the morning, but I also decided to set up a little trap. I placed a few items near the edge of my RV that would make a loud noise if disturbed, hoping to catch whoever was out there. Around 2 a.m., I heard it. A rustling sound outside my RV. It was quiet at first, just the faintest sound of movement, but then it grew louder. Someone was creeping up to the RV. My heart was pounding in my chest. I held my breath, listening. Then, suddenly crash. One of the items I'd left near the edge of the RV fell over, making a loud bang. The figure froze. I quickly grabbed my phone and started recording. Even though my hands were shaking so badly, it was hard to focus. I could hear the person breathing, slow and deliberate, as if they were deciding whether or not to make a run for it. I wasn't going to wait around to find out. I quickly jumped up, unlocked the door, and ran outside, shining my flashlight in every direction. But there was no one in sight. Nothing. Just the faint sound of footsteps retreating into the woods. I called the police, told them everything. I could barely speak through my fear, but I managed to give them the security footage and show them the tire damage. When they arrived, the look on their faces said it all. They found evidence of the intruder footprints leading into the forest, and some tools they'd left behind near the side of my RV. Nothing too major, but enough to suggest they were preparing to do something more than just watch. The police searched the area, but whoever this person was, they were gone. They'd left no trace, no name. I'll never know exactly what their intentions were, but I'm just thankful I got out when I did. I haven't stayed in that campground since. It's been weeks now, and I still can't shake the feeling that I was being hunted. Whoever that person was, they were just waiting for the right moment. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't caught on when I did. All I know is this: sometimes, being alone isn't as peaceful as it seems. You never know who's watching you. A group of friends goes on a camping trip to a secluded area, only to encounter a mysterious man posing as a park ranger who leads them to a dangerous location. As strange events unfold, they realize they are being watched by someone with sinister intentions. I still can't believe how close we came to disaster that weekend. It was supposed to be a fun getaway, just me and my best friends, Katie, Maria, and Jess, camping in Katie's family RV. We'd planned the trip for weeks, excited to leave the city and disconnect for a while. Little did we know we'd end up running for our lives. We arrived at the campground late Friday afternoon. The place was as secluded as promised, surrounded by dense trees with only a few other campers in sight. We set up near a clearing with a decent view of the lake, popped open a couple of beers, and laughed about how outdoorsy we were. The night was perfect, and we were all in high spirits. The next morning, as we were having breakfast outside the RV, a man approached us. He looked official enough, wearing what seemed to be a park ranger's uniform with a badge and a wide-brimmed hat. He introduced himself as Ranger Tom and explained that there had been recent wildlife activity in the area, specifically bear sightings. "You're pretty exposed out here," he said, gesturing toward the clearing. "I recommend you move to a safer spot. There's a more protected area about 3 miles north, less chance of any incidents." We thanked him for the advice, and honestly, we were a bit spooked. None of us were camping experts, and the thought of bears roaming nearby was enough to convince us to pack up and relocate. He even gave us directions, promising it was a perfect spot for a group like yours. The new site was definitely more secluded. The trees were denser, and there was no one else around. At first we thought that was a good thing, peaceful and quiet, but as the day went on, little things started to feel off. For one, we never saw any other campers or rangers pass by, which was strange given how busy the first site had been. Then, as we were exploring the area, Jess found a crumpled shirt under some bushes. It was part of a ranger's uniform. "Do you think this belongs to that guy from earlier?" she asked, holding it up. Katie frowned. "Why would his shirt be out here?" "Maybe he left it behind," Maria suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. That's when the uneasy feeling started to set in. If this was his shirt, why was it crumpled up and hidden? And if it wasn't, whose was it? We decided not to overthink it and went back to the RV, but I could tell none of us were as relaxed as before. That night, things got worse. Around midnight, we heard footsteps outside the RV. At first, we thought it might be an animal, but then the footsteps stopped right by the door. We froze, listening as someone tried the handle. Thankfully, we'd locked it. Maria whispered, "Do you think it's the ranger?" "What if it's not?" Jess hissed back. We killed the lights and stayed as quiet as possible. The footsteps eventually moved away, but none of us dared to sleep after that. By morning, we were all on edge. Katie suggested we pack up and leave, but when we opened the door, we saw footprints in the dirt, human footprints, circling the RV. That's when we knew we had to get out of there. As we started to pack up, I noticed something shiny in the bushes nearby. It was a knife. Not a pocket knife or something you'd use for camping, but a big hunting knife. There was no way this was random. We piled into the RV and started driving, but the road back to the main campground felt like it stretched forever. Every shadow in the trees looked like it was moving. Then, in the rearview mirror, I saw him. The ranger was standing in the middle of the road behind us, watching as we drove away. He wasn't even trying to stop us, just standing there like he wanted us to know he wasn't done. We drove until we found a well-marked trailhead, and, to our relief, actual park rangers. They listened to our story, and their faces grew serious. They told us they didn't have anyone named Tom working in the park, and that the area he'd directed us to wasn't an official campsite. They called the police and promised to investigate, but we never found out who he was or what he wanted. To this day, I don't like thinking about what could have happened if we'd stayed another night. All I know is that I'm never camping in a remote area again,